Breaking, Russia launches hypersonic Oreshnik missile at Ukraine in massive attack. We'll talk about this with Julian Röpcke, senior political editor at BILD. Julian, glad to see you and thank you for joining us.
Hello, good afternoon.
Julian, Russia for the first time since the beginning of the full-scale war struck Lviv with a ballistic missile traveling at the speed of 13,000 kilometers per hour. It was an Oreshnik missile. Let's watch the video and discuss it.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, what we are seeing is here, unfortunately, again, that these 6 warheads, it's a multiple warhead this missile has, are striking, I think, outside Lviv. I heard it's a critical infrastructure project. And yes, I mean, it's a very strange mix. I mean, we can discuss this. It's a little strange. I think everyone agrees that this is a very serious missile on the one side. On the other side, it looks like it again was not armed, which means the warheads were not filled with dynamite, which is really strange. So in the end, no one really knows if this is sort of a test run by the Russians, if this is just propaganda, if they don't have the technology to fill them. In the end, again, it was just 80 kilometers, of course, from NATO territory. So this was a clear message, not only to Ukraine, but I think also to Western leaders.
Julian, do you agree that Putin chose Lviv as the site for demonstrative test as the location closest to the EU in order to intimidate Europeans?
Yes, absolutely. I also don't buy their explanation that this is because of an alleged attack of the Ukrainians. I think there could have been some other answers. And of course, there were so many attacks since they claimed that Putin's residence was struck. I think it's rather a message to NATO and rather a message to the Americans, because we have seen on the one side that this Russian tanker, which was also owned by a Russian, not just under Russian flag, was captured by the Americans and is now moving to America. And on the other side, we have seen this, I think we'll talk about this later, this coalition of the willing. So there is a will of NATO countries, different NATO countries, not all of them, to participate in post-war Ukraine, whatever this might mean. And I think Putin is just angry at all this, angry at the West, angry at Trump, angry at Mr. Merz, at the NATO, what he thinks is one conglomerate of anti-Russian states, whatever, and he wants to frighten these people. I think this is why he chose Lviv. Unfortunately, Ukrainians have again to pay the price for whatever Russia thinks it should or not should do.
And we see that Russia's Ministry of Defense confirmed the strike on Ukraine using an Oreshnik missile, describing it as the Kremlin's revenge for an alleged attack on Putin's residence, an attack that never occurred. How does framing the strike as revenge serve the Kremlin's internal propaganda and political narrative, in your opinion?
Yes, I mean, fortunately, I'm not in the head of Putin. I am not in the head of this lunatic, so I cannot really tell you because, I mean, if you think logical, if it was really a revenge for striking Putin residence, then of course it should be Zelensky's residence or anything like this, which would be hit. That's why I'm saying I don't buy this. I think this is just another strike to demonstrate that they have sort of bigger missiles, bigger than Iskander and other subsonic and hypersonic missiles, which they're using every day almost against Ukraine. I just checked that last year, 2025, almost 1,000 ballistic missiles struck Ukraine. So this could happen at any time, but sometimes they are choosing these Oreshniks, these newer ones. I don't really know for which reason. I think the framing is hilarious. It doesn't make any sense to hit an infrastructure project because someone allegedly tried to attack Putin, and he wasn't even in Novgorod at this time. So again, it makes little sense, but I really don't fully understand the propaganda minds and the military minds behind this.
Russian forces attacked Kyiv with drones and missiles from multiple directions. Intercepting such a large number of enemy targets simultaneously is difficult. Today, air defense forces intercepted 8 out of 13 ballistic missiles. However, fewer caliber cruise missiles were shot down, 10 out of 22. What are the main limitations of Ukrainians' air defense capabilities, particularly regarding the shortage of surface-to-air missiles? What are the key operational challenges Ukraine faces in intercepting simultaneous attacks from multiple missile and drone vectors?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the aim remains the same from a purely military point of view. The Russians want to overwhelm the Ukrainian air defense. This is why they use all the missiles at the same time. We know, as you just said, they use ballistic missiles, they use Caliber cruise missiles, they use Shahed drones, hundreds of Shahed drones at the same time, and also many decoy drones like Gabriel at the same time. So, I mean, this is the idea, to overwhelm them and at least to hit something, as you rightfully said, 50% or not even 50%, but some percent were intercepted. And also you mentioned that there is a lack in missiles, in air defense missiles, especially when it comes to Patriot. Yeah, this is absolutely right. The Germans provided another 2 systems. And I have to say, Ukraine, I think, now operates more Patriot systems than Germany. This is one of the very few things, if I may say this, where I'm proud of Germany. In other things, I'm not when it comes to Taurus and many other things. But there we really gave what we have, because we see it's right now, it's more needed in Ukraine than in Germany. But all this does not help, because we don't produce any missiles for Patriots. So we gave the structures, we gave the infrastructure to use Patriot interceptor missiles against Russian ballistic missiles and cruise missiles, but the Americans and no one else have to give the Patriot missiles. And we heard in the past so many different news that they were not provided anymore. Now we heard that via the SPUR program, some are obtained by European countries, bought, acquired from the Americans, who are not giving anything for free since Donald Trump is in office. And then we are giving them to Ukraine, but I really don't know the exact numbers. And if I listen to President Zelensky, and if I also see what's happening in Ukraine, I think that these missiles which are there in Ukraine, the defense missiles, they are not sufficient. It's clearly not sufficient. We have seen over the past days that you saw probably that Dnipro, Zaporizhia, Kryvyi were totally in the dark. I sometimes really doubt that there's any functioning air defense in large parts of Ukraine. I know other parts are still protected, at least Kiev and some other parts. But it seems to me, unfortunately, more or less like coincidence if especially cruise missiles are intercepted or not. When it comes to drones, it's different, because Ukraine can defend against drones with interceptor drones, with ground-borne systems like Browning machine guns, and with electronic warfare and many other things. But when it comes, especially, as you said, to these very modern and very big missiles, which are also doing a lot of damage, unfortunately, then Ukraine is in big trouble. And I don't see how this should improve over time when the Americans remain reluctant to provide sufficient missiles.
Julian, and what about not only the United States, if we're talking about Patriot systems?
Yes, I mean, as I said, I mean, Germany gave most of the systems. It's more than 50%. The Americans have, I think, 60 batteries. Of course, there's always an argument like not all of them are in use. Some of them have to be refurbished. Yes, of course, but you don't need them in Arizona right now. You don't need them in North Carolina right now. You need them at the front line in Ukraine. But this is something, I mean, I'm saying, and many others are saying for years now, we know the Americans will not provide any more systems, not for free and also not for money, it seems. So yes, I mean, this is a big problem. I don't see where we have enough air defense missiles, and of course, in the end, no matter how many systems and how many missiles you provide, it is shooting at the projectiles and not at the archer releasing them. So of course you would have to hit the bases, you would have to hit the infrastructure in Russia to stop these attacks. This is the only chance you would have to have a sustainable reduction in Russian missiles. If you just wait until they produce enough and then try to hit them in the last second before they hit your town, of course, this is not sustainable at all.
Julian, about what is happening on the ground, you mentioned the coalition of the willing, and we remember that President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky, French President Emmanuel Macron, and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer signed a declaration of intent regarding the deployment of multinational forces on Ukrainian territory. How many troops could France and the United Kingdom potentially send to Ukraine? How do you think, given that these forces are expected to be stationed in Western Ukraine, far from the line of contact, what would their tasks be? And overall, what is the rationale for deploying such forces?
Yeah, please, let's go a step back here, because I think this is very, very crucial. I don't understand what is being discussed in Paris. I don't understand this at all, because what was discussed there is that in a post-war Ukraine, with the allowance, with the acceptance, with the tolerance of Russia, there will be Western troops in Ukraine. And we heard from the German side, at least not on the record, but off the record, and I can reveal this here, that Russia would have to ratify this contract. They would have to ratify foreign troops, German troops on Ukrainian soil and nearby. And no one in the world believes this. I mean, we have heard this yesterday, I think, from the from the Russian foreign ministry. We have heard this also from the Russian presidency, that of course this is nothing they want. And I don't understand why anyone is discussing a post-war Ukraine when we have a war Ukraine. We need a strategy for winning the war, for at least not making Ukraine losing the war. It makes no sense at all to say that Ukraine will get Western weapons, will get Western alliance, will get Western troops, and then say, but the Kremlin has to agree to this. I mean, everyone knows the Kremlin does not agree to this. So the only thing the Russians now have to do is keep fighting. They just need to keep fighting. Not any peace treaty, not any ceasefire, and then they know there will be no Western troops. So I don't understand this whole argument of saying, if the Russians agree, we will have Western troops in Ukraine. For what? For what? I mean, seriously, the Russians will not accept this under any circumstances. I really don't see the point here. I think, again, what we need is a strategy to defeat Russia. No one has this, but it's very nice that we have so many documents and so many plans for post-war Ukraine, while there is no sign on the horizon that Russia will accept any of this.
Unfortunately, we need all of this now, but we understand that it is unrealistic. And as I understand, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz stated after the meeting of the coalition of the willing in Paris that German troops would not be deployed on Ukrainian territory even after a ceasefire is achieved.
Absolutely, but in support. And he also said he was talking about the airspace. He was talking about the sea area of the Black Sea. And you know that our troops, our Eurofighters are already there. I visited them recently in only 60 kilometers from Odessa Oblast, I think. They are stationed in Romania. So from there, of course, you could theoretically stop any new Russian attacks on Odessa. They could do this right now, but they're not doing this. They're just waiting until these drones, the Shaheds, are crossing the airspace or potentially crossing the airspace and then rising to the air and seeing if they are threatening NATO civilians. So again, yes, it's very nice to know that if the Russians agree, the Germans will stop the Russians from another attack. But why on earth should they agree to this if they are in such a good position as they are now? I mean, there has to be a plan, and we have seen this last night in Oriol and Belgorod. There has to be a plan to make the Russian regime suffer so hard that they will stop the aggression, they will stop the attacks. And if this happens, if we have a plan, a strategy, a tactic, and operations to do this, and then we have a ceasefire because the Russians say, okay, let's stop this, then I'm very happy about this. But thinking about the day after the Russians agree to stop fighting and then saying, as soon as they stop fighting, there is an automatism of having Western troops on the ground. I mean, this is an automatism for the Russians to never allow this to happen. So I really don't understand what's said there. I think on other issues, like on Taurus, we have this strategic ambiguity, it's called by our chancellor, so not telling the enemy what we do. So in this case, you are telling the enemy exactly, if you stop fighting, we will have all the things you don't want for Ukraine in Ukraine. So why should the enemy do this? I really don't understand this.
Bilan, about front line, the Dobropillia direction is currently the most difficult and highest priority axis for Russian occupation forces, according to senior lieutenant of Ukrainian Defense Forces call sign Alex. He said the enemy has set the goal of fully capturing the settlements of Rodynske, Myrnohrad and Pokrovsk in the Donetsk region. What factors make the Dobropillia direction the most difficult and highest priority axis for Russian forces now?
Well, I mean, I think it depends who you ask. If you ask someone in the Sivas direction, they will say that this is the most important direction for the Russians here. If you ask a Ukrainian soldier in the Liman direction, they will say this is where the Russians are putting many of their efforts. Of course, the Russians want to occupy all of Donbass. This is one priority next to other priorities. So, of course, they try to advance in this area. In Myrnohrad, I have good news from some people I knew there that at least some of the Ukrainian soldiers made it out. Some soldiers from the unmanned forces, which were not for direct combat, of course. But there, at least, there are some positive signs that there was no big encirclement. You can see this on your map, that it looked, for a certain time, it looked like the Russians could encircle who is back there. Fortunately, this did not happen. But of course, I mean, they want to capture all of Pokrovsk. We have a Scala and I think the 7th Corps saying some of Pokrovsk is still under Ukrainian control. Okay, that's good to know. And it's also good to know that so far in Rodynske, we had some successful counterattacks by the Ukrainian forces, I think from the 1st Corps Azov and other forces around them. So that's a good thing. But again, I mean, the front line is so long, and for the Russians, it is not to capture a certain town or a certain area. It is to capture all of Donetsk Oblast. And for this, they are trying to advance in the Pokrovsk area. They're trying to advance in the Konstantinovka area, which is absolutely crucial for them, because Konstantinovka has to be captured before Dobropillia is captured. And then you would have to go up to the big cities, which is Lviv and Kramatorsk. So yes, I mean, this is also a very important front line they're holding around Konstantinovka. And yes, I mean, what can you say? In the northern flank, and as you're going up the map, I have seen a video today showing Russian forces near Svitlohersk, I think it's called, or Svitlogorsk in Russian, I think. So that's really frightening. I've visited this town myself. This was a wonderful location near the rivers there. And the Russians are trying to flank once again Liman in the south and the north. And I mean, I'm always hoping that it will be another outcome than previously. But when we look at the past, all these, you can see Liman there, and you can see that in the south, it's Yampil, in the north, it's Chandrolova. I think they are slowly but steadily advancing and flanking the big towns. And this is really frightening, I have to say, because this could lead to the same situation we have seen in 50 other Ukrainian towns. So yeah, I don't see any breakthrough there. It's not likely that the Ukrainian army will collapse. Also because of the weather, we see that the Russians are moving very slowly in very small groups. But again, unfortunately, they're slowly moving forward, and we need to change this dynamic. Otherwise, Liman and otherwise Konstantinovka and Rodynske will end the same like hundreds of other towns and villages in Donbass.
What about Kupiansk? In Kupiansk, Kharkiv region, Ukrainian forces continued to clear areas of remaining Russian soldiers attempting to infiltrate Ukrainian defensive positions. Russian troops are trying to disguise themselves as civilians in hopes of avoiding fire from the defense forces. And according to military estimates, the clearing operation will continue for about another month, with fewer than 100 Russian soldiers remaining in the city. How does controlling Kupiansk contribute to the broader defense of Kharkiv region? And what about situation here?
Well, as you know, Kupiansk is on both sides of the Oskil River. The Russians had a very daring maneuver here by flanking on the western side with very limited resources and logistics. It failed, luckily, but I think clearing what's remaining of the Russian forces in Kupiansk on the western side of the Oskil is very important for the Ukrainians. Because in this case, at least, and I really hope so, I hope so many times in the past, I have to say, but you have a natural barrier, which means this river, which you could build to a real front. I mean, over short or long. And we have seen this, unfortunately, in the past days with new Russian flag hoisting videos on the eastern side of the Oskil, also in Kharkiv region. We have seen new Russian advances there. So, I mean, it's only a question of time until you lose this little pocket there, you know, the screen pocket which you have there on the right side, so on the eastern side. So if this happens, you want to be in possession of everything that's west of the Oskil River, because this river can be a frontier, it can be a border. If it's used rightfully, if you stop all these little boats, you know, these rubber boats, and if you stop all these bridges, of course, which the Russians are building, military bridges, then you can use this river as a real front line. And I think that's really important for Kharkiv, because if they if they keep advancing in Kupiansk area, also what's Dvoritsna or something north of it, then you have a real problem. You can see that they are trying to advance deeper into Kharkiv Oblast. They are trying to advance from Vovchansk as well. And of course, you don't want to have yourself in a situation where you are between two fronts as Ukraine, from a Vovchansk area and Kupiansk area. So at least stopping the Russians in Kupiansk and not allowing them to cross the Oskil, I think it's absolutely crucial for the defense of Kharkiv Oblast.
And Kakhovka Reservoir, very interesting fact that over 25 kilometers along the bottom of the Kakhovka Reservoir, Special Forces of Ukrainians main intelligence directorate penetrated deep into the rear of Russian forces in the temporarily occupied territory of Zaporizhia region. During the operation, RHUR fighters captured 2 Russian soldiers, the agency reported. What strategic value do capturing enemy personnel or gathering intelligence in such operations provide to Ukraine?
Yes, I've seen the images of the GUR. I think it's a very good operation because this whole former reservoir is now a big battleground. You could see that there's new vegetation on the former ground of the lake, which means it's also possible to hide between them. It's possible to build bunkers between them to move forward. And apparently the Russians did this. They used the former reservoir, so now the dried out reservoir, to move on the other side. And this is very dangerous, of course, because there's Nikopol, for example, on the other side. Yeah, now you can see Vasilivka. Yeah, very good. But again, I mean, this is not really penetrating into Russian-held areas. This is the dry ground of the lake, which was created because the Russians detonated the Kakhovka dam. So I think first it's very important to be active there, to not allow the Russians to have this giant area of being an area where they can march through, where they can reach Nikopol and other areas in central Ukraine. On the other side, it's also very hard for the Ukrainians to get through this. And I have not seen GUR forces entering Vasilivka, at least not in the footage. They have been operating on the former ground of the lake. Again, it's important, I think, but it's not penetrating into Russian lines. I mean, even on your map here from Deep State, you can see that this was never marked in red. So this is this dried out big reservoir in the middle. Again, it's important to have this, but it's also you should not allow the Russians to get until where the Dnieper is still flowing, because then you're really close to central Ukraine. So this at least needs to remain a gray zone, I think. That's important for the defense of central Ukraine. Otherwise, you have Russian forces from Zaporizhia crossing into Kryvyi area very fast.
Julian, and also about a very strange tactic. Russian occupiers are attempting to transport Starlink terminals near the front line on horseback, according to electronic warfare and communications expert Serhiy Flash Beskresnov, who reported this on his Telegram channel. Is using horses to transport high-tech military equipment really the best way to combine 21st century warfare with 18th century logistics?
Well, yes. As first, it's of course very telling that the Russians are using horses. So this tells you about reality in Ukraine, that the allegedly second strongest army in the world needs cavalry again in the 21st century. That's strange. On the other side, I mean, of course, it makes sense for your soldiers to have internet access. You cannot have internet access if you don't have Starlink in many areas near the front line because of jamming, because of all the television and radio communication towers were destroyed by the Russians. So I mean, it makes sense, whatever it is, on a horse or on a bunker or on the head of the soldier, it doesn't really matter, to have internet there. So of course, these videos of them riding horses and live streaming, this is nonsense. This is just for propaganda or just for fun. I don't even know what the propaganda sense of this is. But of course, I mean, if you go to the front line yourself and you are with Ukrainian units, Starlink is absolutely crucial to all sort of communication. Otherwise, you have to do analog communication, which can be listened to by the enemy. And then the enemy knows live what you're doing, what you're saying, where you're going. You don't want this. So, I mean, it only makes sense for the Russians to put away their analog radio systems and take Starlink to use whatever signal, WhatsApp, Telegram, Viper, whatever messenger. This is encrypted. This is much safer for them. I think it's more like an coincidence. I mean, we have seen them using horses before over the past weeks, which is again telling. That's what I'm meaning. But then, of course, if you use horses, you still need internet communication, which makes it much safer for you to move forward. What I think is really remarkable, and I've seen these videos from different Ukrainian units and Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, is that they're trying to spare the horses. This is really remarkable. Like they were trying to not kill the horses, but killing the people riding on them, the Russian soldiers. They were just frightening them, so they were thrown down from the horses and then killing them on the ground. I think this was something really remarkable. It shows you really what is the good side here and who are the evil ones.
Yeah, and there is nothing sacred to the Russians. We understand this. Julian, yes. Thank you so much for this important and interesting conversation. As always, thanks for supporting Ukraine and Ukrainian people. I need to say that Julian Röpcke, senior political editor at BILD, was with us today. Please share this interview and continue supporting Ukraine. See you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.